Hi everybody, this is A.R.S.E, the Random Stoner Explains, and today we're going to be talking about the forensic mythology of the Mayans, or I'm going to talk about the Mayan mythology's creation story, the tale of the four worlds, and how it relates to a book that was recently declassified by the CIA that talks about what would happen during a pole shift. And in the book, it describes what would happen in the modern world during a pole shift. The book was written in 1966 and immediately was classified by the CIA as top secret because apparently the book is really scary because it describes basically the end of the world. So during a pole shift, what happens is that because the Earth spins 1,000 miles per hour, during a pole shift, that rotation stops. So the water, the wind, everything else on the Earth, is still moving at 1,000 miles per hour, but the Earth isn't. So that would create tsunamis and earthquakes and a supersonic wind that would be moving about 1,000 miles per hour. Volcano eruptions, and then the side of the planet away from the sun would begin to freeze, and within hours it would already be like an Arctic land. So how that relates to the Mayans for Tales of the Four World. In the first world, well, what happens in the tale is that the gods want to be worshipped, so they create people to worship them. And in the first world, they create what are known as the mud people, and they get washed away. I think that's a reference to the Upper Dryas event, and the comet, like I said, as reference, by A.R.S.E and the tale of the goddess Edna hitting the Pacific and causing tsunamis along the Pacific. Then after the mud people get washed away, they create the wood people. The wood people are killed by a flood and fire. So I think that's a reference to the Younger Dryas event, the solar event. The reason why the solar event is important is because it was probably strong enough to cause the pole shift, which is referenced because there was a pole shift in 9600 BC during or right after this solar event. So the flood and fire killed the wood people. I think that's a reference to the solar event, the weeks and months long lightning storm, like I described in the Thor video, followed by the melting of the glaciers that formed during the mini ice age between the Upper Younger Dryas event flood. So fire and flood kill the wood people. After that, the gods create the monkey people, and they're blown off the earth by a wind. I think that's a reference to the pole shift. Like I said, a pole shift will create a supersonic wind storm of 1,000 miles per hour. So some of the monkeys survived in the trees, and the gods left them as a warning to people not to live a mindless life. And then in the fourth world, they created people as we know them now, the Mayan people. Also, the tale of the four worlds is the resurrection story for the Mayan god. So, and like I talked about in the Egyptian fascination with the dead and how it ties into the Younger Dryas event, that solar plasma would have been strong enough to reanimate some of the dead. So, like I said, when I first found out about the book recently, like I said, it's been a couple years since it's been declassified, but I only recently found out about it, and I read about the effects of a pole shift. The part that made me think of the Mayan tale of the four worlds is the windstorm and the monkeys being blown off the earth. So, like I said, I think the Mayans were describing the Upper and Younger Dryas event followed by the pole shift in their tale of the four worlds. And, so I think that story's got to be at least 13,000 years old. Oh, well, 12,800. Some of the events are describing are 12,800 years old, 11,600 years old, and like I said, apparently that solar plasma was so strong it shifted the poles, which, interestingly enough, would have meant that at a 15-degree shift, that Antarctica wasn't always the South Pole. So, I'll talk about this in another video, but the period Reese map that shows Antarctica being uncovered by ice is probably based on the time before the Upper and Younger Dryas. Anyways, though, so like I said, the Mayans were probably describing, what happens, what happened during the Upper and Younger Dryas event with her Tale of the Four Worlds, and that was probably the basis for that story. So, like I was talking about, what I always say, this forensic mythology series is trying to describe or explain how these myths or what they're based on, because these papers that, talk about, like I said, the solar event, that paper that I read, it was just about the solar event. I tied it into the mythology because, when I was reading the paper and it talked about the weeks and months long lightning storm, it made me think of uh, Ragnarok. That's why I tied it. And then I started looking at the other myths, and seeing about how they tie into these events. Anyways, so like I said, the Mayans were probably talking about what happened during those events, the Upper Younger Dryas and the pole shift. So yeah, namaste, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. Like, share, and subscribe, and thank you for watching.